In systems theory, any entity, when abruptly separated and then suddenly returning, generates an impulse that alters the entire existing structure. 3 words that no one in positions of power wants to hear. Right now, Harry is back. After cycles of self-imposed exile and the eruption of opposing streams of information, the sudden appearance of a detached fragment in London is far from merely a media event. From an investigative perspective, this is not a social visit or a routine diplomatic ritual. Could we be witnessing the beginning of a heritage decryption? A mission driven by historical data, obscured for decades, pieces that the system has tried to secure to maintain the stability of the monarchy. The moment the private jet touched down on the runway at RAF Northolt, a gray zone of information began to spread. No ceremonies, no smiles for the cameras. This presence carried the character of a discreet system intrusion. The unusual increase in royal security around Clarence House, unexplained and sudden, is a reflexive instinct of the institution in response to an unpredictable variable. Why has silence become the palace's primary tool at this moment? In information analysis, silence is rarely a lack of data. Rather, it is a tactic to control cracks that are slowly emerging. Harry no longer appears as a lost individual. Instead, he embodies an aura of absolute consistency. No defiance, no anger, but the assurance of someone who holds a crucial key, one capable of rewriting the entire script that the system has long maintained. Behind closed doors, senior officials seem to be facing a ghost from the past. Decisions once considered essential to protect the crown are now suddenly becoming fragile. As the truth begins to leak through the cracks of the power structure, how will the entire system react to prevent a chain reaction of collapse? This comeback is not spontaneous. It feels like the fateful intersection point, where events that began years ago have finally reached a point of collision. Has Harry discovered a truth powerful enough to break even the oldest security protocols? We stand at a historical crossroads. Is this the final attempt at transparency, or the beginning of a new chapter where heritage secrets will no longer be the most secure protective barrier? What is your hypothesis? 1. Did Harry return to seek genuine reconciliation under new conditions? 2. Or did he bring with him a truth key that would force the system to change permanently? Share your analysis in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to follow the second half of this investigation, where we'll unravel what's really behind the whispers at the palace. Those who believe Harry is merely seeking attention must confront a completely different reality. He didn't return to relive the past, but to reconciliation with it. As the palace walls seemed to hold their breath, a disturbing theory began to spread. What if Harry's entire belief system about his identity had been meticulously orchestrated from the very beginning? Internal sources from Highgrove Manor revealed the existence of a sealed file bearing an identifier, Operation Guardian. This is not part of a royal ceremony, but appears to be a security protocol never before published. The appearance of this file, bearing the late Queen's coat of arms and linked to Charles Windsor's name just weeks after the 1997 Paris attacks, opened a rift in Harry's identity structure. Inside that file, the most haunting element wasn't the administrative documents, but a handwritten letter from a woman who had long been silent. Diana, from a strategic analysis perspective, this letter contains not only emotions, but also a blueprint. System alert. Diana seemed to have foreseen a scenario being constructed behind her back, a mechanism designed to shield her youngest son from a truth she believed he deserved to face when the time was right. The reaction from the royal legal apparatus was immediate and forceful. An attempt to block the flow of information was launched, but it seemed too late. Harry, with cold certainty, issued a landmark statement, "I have the right to know, and now the whole world will know too." This is not anger, but a re-establishment of ownership over a personal history that has been manipulated. This investigation leads us to a complex network of secret guardians. A chilling entry was discovered in Princess Anne's personal diary in 2003. The exile pact must remain in effect. He must not know about it. The big question here is, what did they agree to expel him from? Anne, the embodiment of steadfastness, now appears as a guardian of the crown's deepest truths. William's quiet involvement and Camilla's stabilization role further reinforce the hypothesis of a coordinated effort to maintain the current structure at all costs. Every diplomatic smile now seems a protective shell for a silent agreement. It has existed for 2 decades. We are faced with a paradox of truth and loyalty. As the layers of Operation Guardian are gradually peeled away, the picture of British royal stability is being subjected to unprecedented pressure. What is your hypothesis? 1. Are these secrets necessary tools to protect the survival of the throne? 2. Or is transparency the only remedy to mend the rifts in the brotherly and fatherly relationships? Please leave a comment with the number. If you believe that the truth needs to be revealed in its entirety or number. If you believe there are secrets that are best left undisturbed in order to maintain the integrity of the institution. Press like and subscribe to the channel. Join us in our in-depth investigation into the power dynamics hidden behind the glitz and glamour. In an institution where survival depends on legitimacy, stability is not just a goal, but a tactic for navigating the flow of information. From a systems analysis perspective, we see a persistent effort to protect the concepts of lineage matrix and bloodline heritage. In 2019, an information hygiene protocol was activated to divert international press attention away from DNA theories. The goal was clear: to prevent a crisis of confidence that could turn royal standards into an uncontrolled topic of discussion. Beyond just media coverage, legal barriers have been erected to delay any investigation into the transparency of succession documents. All requests for data access are denied under the guise of privacy protection, but in reality, this is how the system protects its resources. Breakpoint, his most sensitive moments. However, the truth often finds a way to emerge through silences. The most devastating shock for Harry didn't come from legal obstacles, but from a symbolic silence. In the final days of Queen Elizabeth II, a final covenant was made. Every senior member received a sealed letter of blessing except for Harry. Was this exclusion a mistake, or the final consolidation of the covenant of silence? Long-standing for Meghan, this is an unmistakable signal Harry has been turned into a pawn in a large-scale preservation strategy. Throughout the years of conflict and exile, the chaos we see is actually a meticulously orchestrated scenario to conceal a fundamental truth. One that leads directly to the most powerful figure today, King Charles. In an isolated area of Balmoral Castle, where secrets are usually kept hidden by the stillness of the forest, a fateful dialogue unfolds. Now standing face to face with his father, the highest guardian of the system, Harry asks for a resolution. Absolute exposure. No assistance, no media, only the truth, and irreparable cracks remained. In that private room, the tension built up by decades of avoidance reached a breaking point. King Charles, his voice heavy with regret and resignation, seemed to have acknowledged something that shattered every piece of his identity Harry had ever held. It was no longer a family conversation. It was a moment that life script. The story of a prince is completely torn apart, revealing a naked reality behind the velvet curtain. Finally, all the masks were removed. The existence of the Highgrove files, codenamed Operation Guardian. And the haunting letter from Diana has been officially confirmed. Charles doesn't deny it. He admits to having approved it from the very beginning. From a systems analysis perspective, this is an attempt to establish a hypothetical safe zone to protect Harry from psychological trauma. However, for Harry, this wasn't protection, but a battle, denying the right to self-determination and individual identity in a systematic way. The burden of the accusation, "You have chosen duty over truth," now hung like a knife cutting into the foundations of the dynasty. Charles, in a state of profound shock, attempted to explain the impossible. The post-Diana era was a time when the royal institution fell into a serious operational crisis. To preserve it, system integrity, and with the line of succession so fragile, a special arrangement was implemented, a scenario Diana had vehemently opposed during her lifetime. The king's silence in response to the question, "Am I part of the plan?" that is the most accurate answer. In the world of symbols of power, individuals are sometimes merely pawns in a larger-scale survival strategy. The meeting at Balmoral did not end with a solution, but with a resolution. Tactical retreat. Harry walked away, leaving behind a king haunted by the very secrets he had once so painstakingly guarded. The portraits of Diana were covered up at Clarence House, not out of disrespect, but as a manifestation of a psychological pressure of inheritance. That's too much. However, the final variable lies in a rebellious act from the mother's past. Diana's voice, frozen in recordings and handwritten letters, was unearthed from an ancient, secure safe. The message was simple: "To my son, if they ever try to silence you." This shows that Diana had anticipated this confrontation decades in advance. She had established the last line of defense. For Harry, an information loop is only opened when the system attempts to control him again. Diana has always lived in fear of her being erased and her memories reshaped by power structures. But she managed to establish one fail-safe backup mechanism for the future. The recording begins with words carrying the weight of thousands of unshed tears, an echo from the past, affirming that the system has failed to bury the truth. She spoke not as a royal symbol, but as an instinctive protector. Diana presented a chillingly detailed theory about a systematic strategy aimed at severing the emotional connection between her and her sons. This is an attempt to controlling the flow of emotional data, minimizing her influence to preserve the institution's image at all costs. Diana's whispered words, "They thought you wouldn't ask anything, but I knew you would." This officially broke the silence in Harry's mind. A name not found in official records, yet clearly present through subtle hints: bloodline. This not only shook the very foundations of identity Harry had accepted, but it was also the ultimate liberation. The instincts that had been keeping Harry awake all this time weren't delusions, but rather the echo of truth, which his mother had sealed away, waiting for this very moment. For Harry, this was no longer a confirmation of pain, but freedom. A freedom not controlled by any royal script. With Diana's words still echoing in his ears, Harry made a choice that shook the very foundations of the monarchy. A 72-hour ultimatum. It was sent directly to the king's private secretary. This is not a threat, but a challenge. Public reconciliation. Either the system must reveal the truth itself, or Harry will be the one to lift the curtain. This single strategically significant email has put the royal press office in a precarious situation. Systemic chaos. The palace walls no longer whispered but roared in the face of the most explosive confrontation in modern history. Within, the power struggle of the dynasty time was no longer on the side of the gatekeepers. Control over the flow of information had officially shifted from the institution to Harry. A frequency collision. A heated argument ensued between the two heirs. William, in a last-ditch effort to protect the stability of the system, attempted to trigger emotional barriers from the past. However, Harry responded with a cold conviction: "The system chose duty over my identity." This is no longer a personal debate, but a refusal to compromise of an entity that has seen through the entire operating mechanism of the organization. Behind that decisiveness is Meghan, who plays the role of a strategic catalyst. After a long period of silence, she urged Harry to undertake a mission: Anatomy of the Past thoroughly. The goal is not revenge, but to unleash the system to reclaim her true identity. Meanwhile, Camilla is present in a state of defensive chaos. Her attempts to establish a legal wall to silence this variable completely failed in the face of King Charles's exhaustion. The king's whispered words, "It's too late." This was an admission of the collapse of all the oldest security barriers. The Windsor institution was paralyzed, with half attempting to appease public opinion and the other half holding their breath in the face of a crisis. The heritage has been distorted. It's about to be revealed. Harry wasn't just planning a typical press release, he was orchestrating a whole new one: media revolution. In an unprecedentedly bold statement, Harry broke all royal protocol. He directly connected with the public through digital platforms, without intermediaries, without censorship, and without a script crafted by PR professionals. This was a significant move: direct decoding. He sent it to millions, exposing the secrets that had haunted him for years. Harry wasn't looking for a sensational headline. He was undertaking a mission. Verify the facts. On a large scale, it asserted that the world deserves to hear what really happened behind the glamorous velvet curtain. Harry no longer held back any reservations. He began with a statement breaking decades of silence. "They lied to me and they lied to you all." From an investigative perspective, this is a case system audit, the most public in history. Harry exposed the entire structure of Guardian campaign, the coded entries in Anne's diary, and especially Diana's message from the afterlife. The message, "My mother has always just wanted me to be free." It resonated across continents, transforming an internal secret into a shared human pain. The truth was no longer confined within the walls of Balmoral. It had become the property of the public. In just a few hours, the digital world exploded in a revolution. Global payments. Hashtags such as Royal Reckoning. Good justice for Harry. It's not just a media trend, but an expression of a movement demanding transparency. However, the palace's reaction is what's most shocking: 24 hours of absolute silence. In communication theory, this silence is called a risky, strategic vacuum. The lack of rebuttal or statement is tacit confirmation of the existence of the forbidden protocols that the royal family has long feared. The institution, once proud of its stability, is now facing a profound crisis of confidence, where old rituals are no longer sufficient to conceal internal rifts. Outside Buckingham Palace, crowds gathered not to protest in the usual way, but to establish a new order of trust. The banners tell the truth, and Diana deserves to be treated better. This demonstrates how Diana's legacy transformed from personal pain into a driving force for systemic change. This is not just Harry's story, it's a lesson about the price of silence and the collapse of old values before the unfiltered power of truth. A deep crack has formed at the very core of the monarchy, a crack that directly threatens the very survival of the Windsor kingdom in the new era. Within the power structure of the kingdom, the emergence of a transparency variable from Harry has created a powerful counter-impact on William, a figure previously considered the central pillar of stability. Behind that resolute exterior lies a struggle, a civil war of the mind, caught between loyalty to the institution and the pain of fractured trust. For the first time in years, the heir to the throne undertook a mission: tactical retreat away from the front lines of defense. The abrupt cancellation of public routes and the establishment of a zone of silence at Anmer Hall was not merely a personal break, but a sign of system paralysis. In that isolated space, William is confronted with a grim paradox. Is the organization he has dedicated his life to protecting truly the one that orchestrated the manipulative schemes against his loved ones? The climax of this crisis lies in the decision to implement a campaign. Data audit. Most aggressively, William demanded direct access to the original files of Guardian campaign. This is the moment when the guardian of the institution decides to confront the forbidden data zones himself. Sitting alone amidst Diana's past footage and Harry's current statements, William seems to be undergoing a process. Psychological restructuring, profound. What was recorded in that sealed file became a life-changing variable, shaking all the values he had once considered fundamental. When the key to the truth is revealed to the heir, his silence is no longer a defense, but a preparation for a confrontation. Redefining heritage, an action that could permanently alter the future structure of British royal power. The tension was now undeniable. The man trained to endure in silence was beginning to face a systemic crossroads. For the first time, William, in the eyes of observers, seemed to be questioning whether the price of maintaining the regime's stability was exceeding acceptable limits. Not just for Harry, but for the entire family structure upon which this institution relies for survival. He understood perfectly what the system expected: stability, absolute loyalty, and above all, disciplined silence. However, alongside that expectation, another layer of consciousness was supposedly emerging. Not the consciousness of an heir, but of a son, a brother carrying memories that had never truly closed. From a psychological systemic analysis perspective, this was the moment when individual identity began to clash with predetermined roles. Some indirect sources suggest that William is not merely reacting, but is calculating, not with impulsive emotions, but with cautious, deliberate steps. And that's what makes the internal atmosphere more unpredictable than ever. The hypothesis is that the next decision, if any, will not stem from the title, but from memory. From the image of a mother who once tried to speak up in a system that was unaccustomed to listening. When two brothers stand on opposite sides of the same history, the entire structure around them is forced to pause and observe. In large systems, turning points rarely come with noise. They usually come from a quiet but irreversible choice. And then, according to recorded signs, the monarchy's reaction emerges. Not in the form of punishment nor exclusion, instead a move that surprises many an offer powerful enough to become the new glue or the catalyst for complete collapse. A few days after Harry's speech, which sparked widespread global interpretation, a secret message was delivered. Not through the press, not through public legal channels, but through a personal envoy. The letter bore the official seal, but its tone was unusual, unceremonious, not commanding merely a proposal for a private dialogue away from the spotlight and the chaos. To some, this might be seen as a signal to de-escalate tensions. To others, it raises questions about a familiar delaying tactic. According to various theories, the family's reaction was not uniform. There is caution resistance and the memory of previous dialogues that failed to bring about substantive change. What makes this moment different from an analytical perspective is not the content of the letter, but the context. When an individual is no longer seeking approval but clarity, every invitation takes on a different meaning. Is this an opportunity for a genuine restructuring of the relationship, or merely a last-ditch effort by a system seeking to maintain control of the narrative? And if that dialogue does take place, who will truly listen, and who will confront the issues that have been delayed for so long? Speculation about the king's health began to surface as noise in a system designed to shield information. According to circulating theories, the prolonged pressures of his role, sleepless nights, and a series of urgent meetings may have led him to reflect more deeply on time and his legacy. There were whispers that he himself had carefully chosen the words in the letter, not as a command, but as a final message to be delivered, while the opportunity still remained. Under the lens of systemic analysis, this was not a sign of weakness, but rather a reflex of a structure facing its own limitations. The proposed conditions were audaciously minimalist. A private meeting between the two brothers, no staff, no press, no recording equipment, just the people and the distance that needed to be faced. After days of deliberation, the agreement was reached not out of optimism, but out of the realization that the longer the unspoken words lingered, the more fragile the system became. Those around them maintained a cautious attitude. Protectiveness and wariness went hand in hand, but everyone sensed a subtle shift, like the wind changing direction before a storm. Behind closed walls, discussions began to emerge. Not about protocol, but about the possibility of restructuring for a different era, one where difficult acknowledgments, unconventional meetings, and decisions once considered impossible were put on the table. Some advisors presumably considered contingency plans, not redefining right and wrong, but repositioning roles, seeing Harry as a potential contributor to the future rather than a symbol of division. Yet this was not reconciliation. Not yet. It was a fragile balance where an ill-considered remark could shatter what had just been rebuilt. But for the rare occasion in years, the two sides entered the same space not as adversaries, but as a family trying to listen to each other. That family was fractured, yet still connected, albeit thinly. Then a final piece of information emerged, a short, anonymous statement from a senior aide. No context, no explanation, just a single line that made observers and constitutional experts pause to ponder. If Harry had returned, perhaps not in the usual way. The story thus continued to unfold, with truths to be examined, relationships to be mended, and secrets to be approached only through questioning. The content you've just watched is for reference only, built from hypotheses, analytical perspectives, and unverified public opinions. It is not an official statement or conclusion. The goal of this video is to open a space for objective discussion where everyone can think and evaluate based on their own reasoning. Now it's your turn to speak. Press 1 if you are curious about the hypotheses presented. Press 0 if you remain skeptical and want to wait for clearer evidence. Don't forget to like and subscribe to continue peeling back the layers of information behind the curtain of silence, where the truth only emerges when we dare to ask questions. London, early 2026. Before the first rays of sunlight reached Big Ben, A strange atmosphere seemed to envelop Clarence House. Unverified information was stirring up public opinion about a pivotal decision that could change the course of one of the world's most prestigious families. Instead of the usual social news, insiders were questioning the temporary suspension of an inheritance distribution process related to Princess Diana's estate. Was this merely a simple administrative procedure or the activation of a protective mechanism established decades earlier? In the world of strict royal rules, the existence of a sealed will has always been the subject of speculation. An abstract concept has begun to emerge: the third clause. According to several theories put forward by analysts, this clause doesn't focus on political upheavals or media attention, but rather seems to point to a more fundamental value: the integrity of the lineage. If this scenario is true, then activating it signals that the institution is facing a potentially structurally destabilizing event, rather than just a media frenzy. All attention is now focused on a shocking theory: the emergence of a 29-year-old woman referred to online by mysterious initials. Is there a connection between the present and the late 1990s, when personal secrets were often obscured by the glitz and glamour of the stage? Unofficial sources suggest that a handwritten letter from 1996, allegedly from the late princess, unexpectedly surfaced after an internal audit. If the rumors are true, that letter contains prophecies of divided bloodlines and a crown shaken by seduction. This is a dramatic fictional scenario, a mother seeking to protect her children from dangers she foresaw decades ago. While London is reeling from legal scrutiny in West Hollywood, tense moments seem to be unfolding between the main characters of this story. Images of a thick stack of documents and stunned faces have left the public wondering, is it time for a long dormant truth to be revealed? The silence from those involved often provides fertile ground for theories to develop. Could it be that a discreet settlement failed to reach a consensus, leading to the issuance of an asset freeze as a last resort? We are facing an investigation into traditional values, truth, and heritage. These are just pieces of a larger picture, and we have only seen the tip of the iceberg. Is this a necessary purge to protect legitimacy, or merely a compounding of misunderstandings within a family already fraught with turmoil and in a world where information is constantly changing? Do you think the ultimate truth is as important as the choices we make about what we believe? Leave your thoughts in the comment section, and we'll analyze them further in the following developments. Amidst the media storm, a statement rang out, not with the clamor of a fame seeker, but with an unusually calm demeanor. The central figure in this controversy did not mention the crown, nor did she refer to the figures in the trust funds. Instead, she emphasized a fundamental human right: the right to know one's origins. The information circulating describes a decades-long quest for the truth. I just want the truth to be acknowledged. A simple statement, yet one that carries immense weight, capable of shaking even the most impregnable palace walls. In the age of technology, theories don't just remain words. Observers are buzzing about the existence of a document supposedly showing the results of genetic analysis from a renowned expert at UCLA. If the parameters of 99.98% similarity are accurate, we are no longer simply dealing with a fabricated story, but with a real threat. Biological evidence. It's very challenging. Why would such a crucial document surface at this sensitive time? Is it a mere coincidence of fate, or the result of a carefully planned effort to bring an old secret to light? The investigation takes us back in time to 1995 to 1996, a period when archivists and insiders were scrutinizing every millimeter of the protagonist's timeline. A ceremonial event in Chicago sealed files from ecclesiastical institutions in the Vatican. Theories suggest there were media lulls during this period, coinciding with the time a baby girl was allegedly born in Oak Park, Illinois. If we connect these ambiguities, a completely different picture of the past gradually emerges. It raises a major question about consistency in the public records of celebrities. Can we ever truly know everything about someone's past, no matter how long they've been in the spotlight? Deep within the sealed archives of the Vatican, there are reports suggesting the existence of a file from 1997, a request to revoke past commitments. Theories are circulating about the presence of an unidentified entity within these ecclesiastical documents. If these clues to the past are real, they are not simply old pages of paper. They pose a perplexing puzzle: moral trust and transparency. In the world of royal protocol and international law, inconsistencies between public records and personal reality can have consequences that extend far beyond a simple family dispute. It touches upon the very foundations of immigration regulations, prenuptial agreements, and the legitimacy of a long-standing institution. Deep within the sealed archives of the Vatican, there are rumors of a record from 1997, an application to annul past commitments. Theories are circulating about the presence of an unidentified element within these ecclesiastical documents. If these clues to the past are real, they are not simply old pages. They pose a perplexing puzzle: moral trust and transparency. In the world of royal protocol and international law, inconsistencies between public records and personal reality can have far-reaching consequences extending beyond a simple family dispute. It touches upon the very foundations of immigration regulations, prenuptial agreements, and the legitimacy of long-established institutions. Why is verifying ancestry so crucial? The answer likely lies in the spirit of Third Clause. This is part of Princess Diana's will. From a hypothetical analysis perspective, inheritance is not just about material possessions, but about the clarity of bloodline. Once doubt is sown, it has the potential to undermine the validity of any claims related to trust funds. This is no longer a battle of the present, but a battle to protect the authenticity of the lineage against unforeseen variables. On January 16th, a blurry video clip allegedly filmed at a West Hollywood cafe caused an online uproar. These images captured not just a conversation, but a fierce clash between two worldviews. Through analysis of body language, one side showed panic, while the other displayed extreme tension. The fragmented words are believed to have appeared in that space. The truth was there before it began. Good. The future of the next generation. While the authenticity of the conversation remains questionable, the emotions emanating from those frames are undeniable. Could the black file the woman carries be the key to unlocking the Diana Protection Fund, a fund currently frozen in a terrifying silence? The character codenamed AM, though never appearing directly on screen, has become the focus of a global investigation. We are witnessing the most serious legal and ethical reckoning in decades. Is this a perfectly orchestrated move to redefine power, or the inevitable resurgence of a truth that has been suppressed for too long? If you held the black file, would you choose to release it to seek justice, or keep it secret to protect the peace of a family? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and follow so we can get to the bottom of this investigation in the next part. In the corridors of British justice, a legal case has just been filed, not seeking glamorous titles or material compensation, but aiming for a more abstract goal recognition of bloodline. If this request is granted, it will create an unprecedented precedent, placing a missing piece right at the heart of the royal succession diagram. The existence of the figure codenamed AM is not just a personal story. It is an entity capable of changing the entire trajectory of the Sussex family. The emergence of these streams of information seems to have created an emotional storm for those involved. There are reports of mental instability, self-reflection on the past, and doubts about the authenticity of seemingly predetermined events. Meanwhile, the absolute silence from the central figure Meghan Markle is being scrutinized by analysts. Is this a tactical move to observe her opponent, or is it confusion in the face of a truth that is gradually emerging? On January 17, 2026, a brief news item in the official Vatican newspaper attracted the attention of royal legal scholars. Despite being written in coded and cautious language, the announcement appears to confirm the preservation of documents relating to discussions from 1995 to 1996. Why would a powerful religious institution like the Vatican retain the spiritual anxieties of the late Princess Diana? Theories are connecting details about a blind Tibetan mystic and warnings about a turbulent future for Harry. Could what we are witnessing today have been foreseen over 30 years ago in a secret meeting between humanitarian groups? Faced with undeniable pressure, the Royal Medical Ethics Council appears to be considering a scenario previously considered impossible, demanding independent verification of biological records. This has been described as a last resort to protect the legitimacy of the royal institution. A truth-checking is underway where traditional values confront modern scientific evidence and prophecies from the past. We live in a time when history is no longer a collection of old pages, but a living entity demanding transparency. From secret Vatican files to a mother's handwritten letters worrying about her child, every path leads to one ultimate question: does truth always bring liberation? Or does it sometimes foreshadow a greater downfall? Do you believe in factual scientific evidence or spiritual warnings preserved for decades? Deep within royal history, the late Princess Diana's secret anxieties about what she called a divided lineage are often mentioned. There are theories that after her meeting with an Eastern mystic, she left behind two important documents. If one was kept by her loyal butler, the other is believed to have lain untouched in the apostolic archives in Rome for decades. The contents of the document, titled Secret Letters Sent Through the Air, are becoming the focus of speculation. The prophetic passages about outward appearances concealing true nature and those who attempt to grasp the crown without its bloodline are sending shivers down the spines of observers. Although the Holy See has not officially confirmed it, the recent opening of rare archives for legal investigations demonstrates the seriousness of the matter. The investigation appears to have extended beyond religious documents to include security matters. Sources suggest that special surveillance protocols have been set up to review the period from 1995 to 1998 in Meghan Markle's life, a period now considered a golden opportunity to unravel mysteries. What is being discovered has the potential to shake the entire media landscape of the Sussexes. The key point lies in a figure from Pennsylvania who is believed to have had a close connection with her in the mid-1990s. Has an old chapter in her life been forgotten, or is it shrouded in a thick fog of privacy? Why have rumors of a past ritual suddenly resurfaced so strongly? The answer likely lies not in ordinary civil records, but in forgotten papers within church institutions. Theories are centering on a request to annul a marriage commitment sealed in 1997 in Chicago. If these documents truly exist and confirm a contradictory lifestyle and the presence of previously undisclosed personal elements, it would completely alter the definition of transparency for modern members of royalty. We stand before a labyrinth of sealed files, prophecies from the past, and high-level security investigations. Each piece unearthed leads us to a deeper question of identity and truth. Should we believe what is presented on camera or the coded messages preserved in handwritten letters from 3 decades ago? If Diana's prophecies are true, are we witnessing the beginning of a downfall or a necessary purge for the future of the crown? According to the strict regulations of ecclesiastical law, sensitive files concerning influential figures are often forwarded to Rome for processing at the highest level. Among these documents, the existence of a confidentiality request is mentioned, a plea for the confidentiality of personal information, because those involved are likely to face the public eye. The issue here is not about the rightness or wrongness of a personal choice, but about the compatible with traditional rules. In the world of royalty, transparency is not just a virtue, but a legally binding requirement. If the pieces of the past, from marriage commitments to the presence of dependents, are not fully disclosed from the outset, it will create a legal domino effect directly impacting the constitutionality of current relationships and international residency procedures. A legal advisor once made a rather cryptic remark: "The issue isn't the shame, but the gaps." The unfinished pages of the main characters' life stories are being pieced together by all parties involved. On January 14th, the presence of a key figure at a leading law firm specializing in international disputes opened a new avenue for speculation. Instead of silence, a multifaceted defense strategy appears to be taking shape. The goal is likely to prevent the spread of documents from the Vatican, protect the biological privacy of future generations, and reshape the nature of the palace's financial freeze. A voice from Hollywood offered a sharp analogy: "This is no longer an ordinary game of chess. When the pieces are no longer in the right positions, people tend to want to overturn the entire board." On the morning of January 18th, 2026, history will likely record this as the moment when vigilance shifted to a state of large-scale, coordinated containment. A whisper from a 29-year-old woman became a real earthquake, forcing all levels of leadership to take action. We are witnessing a convergence of classified intelligence records, ancient Vatican rules, and modern genetic analysis. All are coming together to create a moral and legal judgment unlike any other in the modern history of the Windsor royal family. The veil of mystery is gradually being lifted, but behind it lies a new labyrinth of questions. When truth is no longer a single concept, but a synthesis of fragments from the past, what will we believe? Can an established system adapt to unprecedented variables, or will it choose silence to preserve its existing structure? And more importantly, in the battle between transparency and privacy, who truly holds the key to the future? As the legal hurdles from Diana's third clause began to take effect, a new strategy quietly emerged in the corridors of power from Windsor to Clarence House. Observers called this heritage blockade, inheritance lockdown, a systemic response to unpredictable developments from the Vatican and transatlantic legal moves. The focus of this campaign is believed to revolve around the decisiveness of the heir to the throne. On January 17th, an executive directive was reportedly issued suspending all claims and ceremonies related to the Sussex family. This is not merely an individual reaction, but is seen by experts as a self-defense mechanism aimed at preserving the asset's reputation and stability of future generations. One of the clearest signals of this purge is the correction of institutional memory. The removal of a central figure's name from the archives of long-standing royal initiatives sends a quiet but powerful message. While legal hurdles are being set, the family's moral guardian, Princess Anne, appears to be taking on the role of overseeing transparency. A comprehensive audit of funding and donations during the 2020 to 2023 period has been triggered. The ultimate goal of this action is to ensure that the royal institution is not drawn into scenarios they never agreed to. This is no longer a matter of a family. It is a test of a monarchy's ability to govern itself. While legal storms rage behind closed doors, Princess Catherine appears to be playing a long game through the power of symbols. On January 18th, her appearance in a navy blue outfit at a children's hospital drew all eyes. Fashion and historical analysts suggest this is no random choice but a strategically calculated reference to the image of Princess Diana, a silent message of stability, composure, and the continuation of the legitimate lineage is being sent amidst the storm. This battle is not only taking place in legal documents but also in shaping public perception. When the monarchy chooses coordinated restraint and heritage blockade, they stand at a historical crossroads. In the most turbulent times, dignity is sometimes defined by silence. Some sources claim that Princess Catherine made a very impactful statement: dignity is a more enduring language than opinion. This is not merely a conversational phrase, but is considered by observers to be a guiding principle for the dynasty's defense strategy. Within the internal world, heritage seems to be likened to a garden. To maintain its beauty and purity, the gardener not only protects the trees from storms, but also must quietly remove weeds elements that could harm overall growth. The meticulousness in each internal memorandum and the decision to freeze financial privileges were seen as necessary steps to preserve the heritage estate from potential legal risks. As doubts about integrity spread, the monarchy appeared to have established a no-entry, no-exit defense system through 3 new rules, a defining moment of silence. All mention of the figures at the center of the storm has been suspended in official discourse until the issues of lineage are legally clarified. Storage is limited. Joint projects and related digital data are all placed in a sealed state, creating a barrier separating the past from the present. Contingency guardianship scenario. A group of experts has reportedly been formed to examine legal protection options for the next generation in preparation for a worst-case scenario where current legal frameworks become ineffective. This stance represents a dramatic shift from a reactive to a permanent defensive posture. While the walls of London were being reinforced across the Atlantic, a completely different kind of rift was unfolding in the spotlight. The meticulously crafted media image appears to be undergoing a significant erosion. The first domino fell when one of Hollywood's most powerful guardians officially announced the severance of contractual and personal ties. According to insiders, this rift doesn't stem from typical financial conflicts, but rather from a feeling of being caught in a hypothetical storm they never wanted to be caught in. Manipulating alliances is the term being used by the American media as an explanation for this sudden turn of events. A thought-provoking theory about kindness and its limits is circulating among Hollywood observers. Unverified reports suggest that one of the Sussex's most powerful allies has realized a harsh reality. Sometimes rescuing an entity in distress inadvertently brings the storm into one's own life. This figure's quiet withdrawal is seen as a red flag for the entire entertainment industry. If these speculations are true, the central figure is no longer seen as a brand asset to be protected, but seems to be shifting to what the business world calls a state of reputation risk. Looking back at media history, people are beginning to analyze a pattern called the Risk Alliance. From the shocking announcements of 2021 to the unusual silence of media giants in 2026, we see a systematic erosion of trust. The once impenetrable walls of A-list alliances now seem fragile in the face of exposed inconsistencies. There are reports of streaming giants and talent management companies undertaking a process they call a risk alliance, reassessing the value of commitment. The fact that audio projects are delayed or publishing contracts are rejected within just 48 hours are pieces of the puzzle that indicate a withdrawal-controlled repositioning is happening on a large scale. In Montecito, the glamour that once served as a beacon of self-repositioning is now shrouded in an ominous silence. No official announcements, no massive campaigns, only the stagnation of product lines and quiet farewells on professional social media platforms. Local reporters describe the situation with the phrase, "The fortress is cracking." When bridges to the throne are broken and alliances in Hollywood crumble, the protagonist must confront a reality they probably never imagined: systemic isolation. The legal actions at this point seem more reactive than proactive, and any silence is being interpreted by the community as tacit confirmation of the prevailing theories. Her silence is being analyzed by the community as tacit confirmation of the prevailing theories. At this point, a big question arises, based on the recent events. What are your thoughts on the main character in this power struggle? If you find their actions somewhat understandable, leave a comment with the number 2. But if you believe this is an inevitable collapse of media masks, leave a comment with the number 5. Your opinion is a crucial piece of the puzzle in this discussion. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next shocking details we're about to reveal. On the evening of January 18, 2026, the focus of all attention narrowed to a single figure, Prince Harry. Amidst legal proceedings and frozen financial accounts, the palace silence seemed to carry the most terrifying message. In particular, the cryptic statement by a senior member of the Royal Advisory Council on January 17th marked a significant shift. This was no longer about maintaining personal distance, but an effort to redefining institutional value in the face of change. We are witnessing a powerful purge where illusory values and fabricated narratives are facing the harsh realities of law and ethics. Is this the final chapter of a dream of American thrones, or the beginning of a profound self-reflection for those involved? As the spotlight fades and the cheers die down, what will remain beneath the frozen surface of these titles? In the architecture of a modern dynasty, people are beginning to realize that heritage cannot be built on assumptions. Transparency is not an act of cruelty. It is considered the highest measure of trust. Questions about biological eligibility and authenticity of lineage now seem to have moved beyond the tabloid pages and into the very heart of Windsor's legal system. At Clarence House, an unprecedented decision is believed to have been made Activating Regency Clause 14, a mechanism seen as freezing recognition for cases where there is ambiguity in the evidence. On the morning of January 18, 2026, insiders recorded a highly symbolic image: a man leaving his Montecito mansion in a private car carrying the last belongings of his late mother. This was not simply a geographical journey, but was interpreted by psychological analysts as a symbolic retreat, a return to a life of solitude in the face of unavoidable truths. Some argue that this was not an expression of anger, but rather a profound sense of loss, as what had once been fought for was now vanishing through legal proceedings. The reappearance of the former housekeeper, along with a handwritten letter from May 1997, has become a haunting turning point. The words allegedly written by the late Princess Diana about her choice between love and legacy are being used as a legal framework to assert the legitimacy of inheritance funds. In California, a new defensive strategy is taking shape, attempting to reshape the narrative through the lens of injustice. However the world seems to be shifting, instead of emotional displays, the public is beginning to crave concrete evidence. The palace's silence, coupled with the head of the dynasty's brief speech on longevity and managing time, drew a clear line. A final separation has been established. No more financial ties, no more old privileges, and no more nominal overlaps. A veiled saying is circulating within inner circles. Sometimes to protect the crown, you have to choose to let go of someone close to you. The story of self-made glory seems to have come to an end. The dynasty, after enduring harsh trials, now stands firm in its authority and remains unshaken. In your opinion, is absolute transparency the salvation of a long-standing institution, or is it the very factor that shatters even the most beautiful dreams? If you were in Harry's position right now, would you choose to remain silent or speak up? Leave your comments before we get to the most shocking part. This content is purely for informational purposes, based on unverified hypotheses and opinions. Let's discuss it from an objective analytical perspective. Don't sit still, interact with me. Press 1 for curiosity and 0 for skepticism. Like and subscribe now to join me in uncovering the truth behind the veils. Switches to ignoring mode. Recently, royal observers have noticed a cryptic message believed to have originated from the Balmoral estate. Without explicitly naming anyone, the sharp words seem to allude to a classic fable, the story of the signal spoofer. An unverified source suggests that Princess Anne's reaction was not simply the disappointment of an aunt, but rather the rejection of an institution. When reconciliation efforts are likened to the shepherd boy's cry for help, it raises a frightening hypothesis. Has the Windsor royal family officially activated a permanent disconnection protocol? If this hypothesis is correct, then the Duke of Sussex's return to London earlier this month, despite the confidence gained from legal victories against media corporations, was perhaps just an attempt to knock on a sealed wall. Let's look at the royal family's travel schedule through the lens of a geopolitical chess game. The data shows that just before our protagonist arrived in London hoping to establish a direct channel of dialogue, a coincidence occurred. The Prince and Princess of Wales made a trip to Scotland. The media called it a long-term commitment, but from a behavioral analysis perspective, many experts questioned it. Could this be a tactic of creating physical distance to avoid diplomatic conflict? If they had stayed just 24 hours, a historic meeting might have taken place. But history has no ifs. This mismatch in space and time seems to be a silent message. The door to diplomacy has closed. Meanwhile, across the ocean, a different scenario is unfolding in Silicon Valley. The Duchess's absence from court proceedings in England is not merely a logistical issue, but appears to be a deliberate move. Brand repositioning, images of her appearing in Palo Alto, dressed in a white suit, and without her wedding ring triggered a series of semiotic theories. The absence of the ring, could it be a message of independence? And more notably, this event was believed to be linked to a venture capital fund with the ticker symbol MS, a mysterious financial variable from the Middle East. Strategic analysts believe this is not merely an expansion of relationships, it may be a preparatory step toward a separation of public image. A former aide once remarked cryptically, "These are positioning moves," and those on the inside certainly understand the rules of this game. Let's conduct a thought experiment. What if history had taken a different turn in 2016? Archived records point to the name Lady Arabella Montlair, a figure insiders once described as the perfect missing piece for the traditional royal framework. They shared the same educational background and conservative values. But at that time, the allure of freedom and unconventionality from the American factor prevailed. The system had once hoped for a safe combination, but individual choices disrupted that pattern. Now, in retrospect, the contrast between reality and that parallel universe creates a paradoxical picture. On one side, stability within a framework. On the other, freedom, but at the cost of isolation. From a symbol of liberation, the Duke of Sussex's journey seems to be facing an existential crisis. Popular culture critics have noted a shift in his status. From the protagonist of his own life story, he appears to be gradually becoming a satellite, revolving around larger media projects. Quiet appearances, supporting roles on the red carpet, all paint a picture of a man searching for his true self. The dazzling California dream seems to be transforming into a more complex structure, where the stone walls of the old castle have vanished, replaced by the invisible glass walls of media pressure and performance. The ultimate question we as observers must ask is, does absolute freedom truly exist, or are we simply moving from one cage to another, more glamorous one? Time is a cruel sculptor. On the face of the man, once a symbol of military courage and royal dynamism, now stand the marks of a persistent inner struggle. Behavioral observers believe that the Duke of Sussex is experiencing a psychological phenomenon called identity displacement. From being a force for change, he seems to be gradually realizing that he is merely a supporting element in a brand strategy over which he no longer has control. The turning point in this breakdown didn't begin with noisy legal disputes, but rather stemmed from a more private space, a gap in generational responsibility. As the youngest members of the family enter a critical stage of cognitive development, a serious disconnect in family governance perspectives emerges. Sources close to the Montecito ecosystem reveal that Harry has expressed deep concern about his partner's frequent absences. While he desires a physical presence to provide psychological stability for the next generation, his partner is devoting all his energy to re-establishing his global standing as a thought leader in justice. Harry's suggestions to adjust his schedule reportedly met with resistance. In a philosophical debate, his traditional views were labeled outdated and patriarchal. This was the first crack in the foundations of the alliance. But the peak of suspicion didn't come from words, but from tangible objects. A theory is circulating widely among insiders about the appearance of these untransparent funding sources' luxury items, from diamond-studded jewelry to works of art, began appearing at the residence without any clear transaction records. When questioned, the answers often revolved around concepts like PR strategy or brand partnerships. But the intuition of someone who had lived in a high-security environment like Harry's began to sound the alarm. Open Intelligence OSINT began to connect the dots. Speculation centers around a powerful figure in aristocratic sports circles, a shadow investor known for funding media projects and collecting global icons. While no joint images have been released, the timelines of the charity meetings and the secret project, 90419, coincide eerily with the Duchess's absence. Consider the timeline. Just 20 hours after such a secret meeting, Harry appears alone in Santa Barbara. His red eyes and exhaustion are not merely physical signs, but symptoms of complete isolation. When Harry attempted to re-establish the boundary setting, the reaction he received was described as a devastating psychological attack. An anonymous source described him as being likened to the weak remnants of an old golden cage, a bitter irony comparing him to the very system he had abandoned to fight against. At that moment, Harry realized his true position. He was not a companion, but an asset losing its usefulness. It was no longer a marriage in the traditional sense. It was a business merger that had reached a dead end. Let's pause the document analysis for a moment and hear from you, the channel's observers. Based on the recent psychological developments, how do you assess Harry during this phase? Comment number 2 if you feel sorry for him. A lost soldier, manipulated and lonely, paying the price for his mistakes. Comment number 5. If you feel no sympathy at all, and believe this is the deserved outcome of what he has done to his family. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to stay updated on the shocking legal developments ahead. Harry felt like a minority shareholder in the very company he had invested in. And as an inevitable consequence of this irreconcilable conflict of interest in August 2025, a final decision was made. In a chilling silence, the legal documents for terminating the alliance were drafted. The reason given was not just a difference of sentiment, but a complete breakdown of moral compass. In any high-level negotiation, whichever side holds the other's emotional vulnerability will prevail. This is the fundamental principle of asymmetric information warfare. Just as legal proceedings were being initiated, an unexpected variable appeared on Harry's personal communication device. Not a legal document, but a highly damaging image. A medical moment involving the next generation, little Lilibet. Analysts believe this was no simple family announcement. In that sensitive context, it became a strategic leverage. As a result, the very next morning, case number 2025-DR-3381 in Santa Barbara was closed and permanently sealed within 72 hours. Harry chose his children's safety over victory at the negotiating table. A painful tactical retreat. The reconciliation period, which lasted from September to November in San Luis Obispo, revealed a harsh truth: the bankruptcy of faith. But even more frightening than the disagreements themselves is the way the conflict is handled. Leaked recordings reveal a complex psychological pattern: reality distortion. When Harry expressed legitimate concerns about security or integrity, the response he received was not empathy, but a sophisticated reframing technique. His anxieties were labeled as remnants of outdated thinking, as fantasy. The image of the Windsor ruins. In other words, his pain is denied and attributed to a systemic failure in his own thinking. This is the pinnacle of narrative control when the victim begins to doubt his own sanity. Parallel to the internal crisis is the collapse of the external economic front. By the end of 2025, the Montecito ecosystem begins to face the harsh laws of market elimination. Media giants like Netflix and Spotify, who had bet millions of dollars on the brand, have begun implementing loss-cutting measures. The reason given is chillingly simple: lack of depth and real-world resonance. The market no longer pays for a good reputation. More seriously, the Archewell Foundation, once hailed as a beacon of ethics, is reportedly under the scrutiny of auditing agencies. Resource allocation efficiency. Questions about inconsistencies in financial reporting are a sign that the top echelons of this empire are shaking. Amidst that chaos, a moment of truth has inadvertently leaked out. A seemingly harmless statement on a podcast, yet it carries the weight of a subconscious confession. Sometimes the person you give the world to believes they are your creator. Initially, the public thought it was a jab at the royal family. But now, in the current context, it's the sigh of a man realizing he's been stripped of his authorship over his own life. And then what had to happen happened. January 23, 2026. No loud press release. No blockbuster interview. There was only one cold, decisive legal action. Prince Harry officially announced he was relinquishing his California residency. It wasn't just a move, it was a unilateral declaration of independence. He declared his separation from all institutional frameworks in the United States to start anew as an independent individual. The American dream was over, but Harry's journey of self-discovery had perhaps only just begun. The consequences of this event are not measured by political indicators, but by the collapse of symbols. Before any official announcement was made, financial censors had detected unusual tremors from the Sussex estate. This wasn't simply a matter of cutting expenses, but a process. Total deconstruction. 3 senior executives at Montecito have received notices of termination. A luxury Range Rover, a symbol of power mobility, has been quietly returned to Jaguar UK without any request for replacement. This move has been described by analysts as a stripping of ranks in civilian life. More notably, financial records show that a complex debt negotiation is underway with representatives of a Beverly Hills media mogul, someone who once provided them with a protective shield back in 2020. Harry isn't just repaying financial debts, he's settling every debt of gratitude cleanly and completely to sever the last remaining ties to Hollywood's elite. A source close to the situation observed, "This isn't downsizing. This is the act of a man tearing down a false castle to rediscover his true foundation." By the end of the week, news satellites confirmed Harry had established a new base, a secluded rented apartment in Hampshire. No more heavy security, no PR entourage, no flashing cameras. The contrast between glamorous Santa Barbara and tranquil Hampshire mirrored the contrast in his state of mind. At his old residence, a handwritten note was found, a declaration of his rebirth. "I lost myself in the noise, but I found a reason to start over in solitude." That is the state demilitarization of individuals. He shed all his defenses to confront himself. While Buckingham Palace maintained a strategic silence, Princess Anne, considered the steel pillar of the royal family, stepped to the front lines. At a riding center in Perth, her response was not tinged with personal emotion, but carried the weight of a history lesson. She recalled the metaphorical image of the boy who cried wolf. Without naming names, the message was about inflation of trust. It has been clearly sent, when the wolf actually arrived, the alarm system was neutralized by the very lies that had preceded it. However, political observers point out an interesting contradiction in her tactics. Despite publicly issuing warnings, intelligence sources confirm that Anne secretly activated legal advisors to establish a safety net. She was the only one who believed in Harry's ability to reform, but that belief came with strict preconditions. But all the royal calculations, all media predictions, were overturned by an unexpected move. Princess Anne's fragile faith seemed to have reached its limit in Geneva. On the night of January 22nd, Harry unexpectedly appeared at a forum on media ethics and the misuse of cross-border information. He wasn't there to apologize. He was there as a living witness, someone holding the most sensitive data on how the media machine operates. This appearance wasn't a white flag of surrender, but a signal that Harry was ready for a new battle where he was no longer the victim, but the holder of the truth. The story of the shepherd boy has ended. Now it's the story of the hunter searching for his lost flock of sheep. The scene in Geneva didn't resemble an entertaining press conference, but rather a hearing. There was no PR machine, no script prepared by Hollywood experts. The man who stepped onto the podium dressed minimally performed an action that analysts called a reclaiming personal sovereignty. The handwritten note in his hand contained no excuses. It contained an admission of system failure. I was wrong about the input parameters, and I was being manipulated by algorithms that weren't my own. That 3-minute video created a digital earthquake. But the real aftershock wasn't the apology, but the accompanying data. Immediately after the announcement, an anonymous source whistleblower detonated a bombshell. Leaked documents hinted at the existence of an unspoken protocol. It was signed at the end of 2024. The hypothesis is that while one side is trying to protect its privacy, the other, the strategic partner, appears to have signed an agreement transferring access to internal royal data to a New York-based media corporation. This is not just a matter of trust. In intelligence terms, this is misconduct. Information arbitrage, where national and family secrets are converted into commercial assets without the consent of the parties involved. The severity escalates when the attached files are decrypted. These are believed to contain audio data recording high-level interactions between 2020 and 2022. If the authenticity of this data is verified, it would mean that the royal family's information security has been breached from within. Storing private conversations without consent is considered a serious offense. Unorthodox surveillance. Faced with this accusation, Buckingham Palace activated a strategic silence mode, neither denying nor confirming. Because in the world of diplomacy, silence in the face of a serious violation is often a sign of a potential threat. The red line. It has been surpassed permanently. The monarchy, like a living organism, is reacting to protect itself. The late Queen might have called this a cold cut, not because love had run dry, but because institutional preservation protocol. The top priority has been given. A dramatic shift in power is underway. Charles is relinquishing his responsibilities, and William and Catherine are taking over the royal estate. This move is reinforcing the firewall around the throne. The message is clear: the door to reconciliation has closed to protect the remaining structure of the castle. Back in Hampshire, where the roars of the California canyons and the grandeur of Windsor were long gone, the man who had once been a prince, a duke in exile, paced back and forth in his quiet rented house. All titles, all honors, all illusions of global influence had been stripped away. He had returned. 0 point. But in that absolute silence, when the noise of ambition faded away, he realized his only remaining and most important role. Not as a symbol, not as a media commodity, simply as a father finding his way home. And perhaps that was the real beginning. Now the former prince faces a fateful decision, the most brutal, zero-sum game of his life. Sources close to him describe his mind as a battlefield where an endless battle rages between responsibility for protection and the ego's need for survival. For him, every hour that passed in Hampshire was an invisible punishment. The absence of Archie, 6 years old, and Lilibet, 3 years old, was not just a source of longing, but a disruption of the generational flow. But the paradox lies in this: returning to the war zone, to be near his child, means accepting the gradual erosion of his own self. He is trapped in a dilemma. Staying means fading into historical oblivion, while leaving means facing the risk of being typecast as a villain who abandons his family. The end of 2025 saw the activation of mandatory reconciliation protocols in California. The initial goal was to establish a transcontinental parenting model, where the next generation would inherit the elite British education alongside the freedoms of America. However, this proposal encountered a solid ideological wall. The opposing side completely rejected it, labeling the British education system as a regression to imperialism and considering it a systemic vulnerability. The result of negotiations spanning 2 closed-door sessions was an asymmetrical ceasefire agreement. Harry theoretically accepted joint custody, but in reality he was bound by a geographical veto power. The succeeding generation is locked within U.S. territory and cannot move without the signature of approval from the remaining guardian, an overwhelming victory in terms of territorial control. While one side was paralyzed by legal hurdles, the other made a calculated strategic move on the new geopolitical chessboard, the Middle East. On January 19th, the cameras captured the Duchess's appearance in Abu Dhabi, the new center of power for the super-rich. It was no coincidence that this event took place just 4 days before the Geneva Accords. This was a display of precise brand management. Dressed in an elegant black abaya, the highlight wasn't the words, but the sign language of the expensive Cartier brooch, an item rumored by insiders to symbolize a new funding stream from the Gulf region. Analysts call this jewelry diplomacy. Standing before an audience of financial architects and global technology philanthropists, the message delivered went far beyond the confines of traditional feminism. The theme of women reclaiming autonomy without permission is essentially a blueprint, declaration of independence encrypted. She wasn't just speaking about women in general. She was publicly repositioning herself an independent entity, having broken free from the orbit of the British monarchy and forging a new alliance with global resources. One attendee remarked cryptically, "She's very charismatic." But clearly she's not just giving a speech. She's soliciting investment for a new empire where she'll have absolute power. Beneath the polished rhetoric of the speech, behavioral analysts have uncovered a dramatic shift in thinking. The excerpt circulating on social media is not simply a philosophy of life, but the manifesto on absolute egoism. The quote, Sometimes love means leaving and becoming your own ruler. It is seen as the final verdict on old contracts. Many observers believe this is a unilateral announcement ending not only her role as marital partner, but also a rejection of traditional definitions of family responsibilities and royal duties. She is shedding her old identities to build an empire where there is only one ruler. But every empire needs resources to operate. Even as global imagery is being reshaped, shadow data continues to follow. The focus is on a powerful figure from the Gulf, hailed as the new financial architect for the distinct Sussex brand. Economic intelligence reports confirm this individual's presence in Abu Dhabi alongside two senior executives from House Aru, a luxury goods group from Paris. The theory that a royal inspiration fragrance line is launching this spring isn't just business. It's a strategic move, commercializing old glory to cultivate new power. Meghan appears to be undertaking a visual technology transfer, draining Windsor's iconic value to inject it into her personal brand. January 20th. 3 days before the Geneva event, a final digital signal was sent. Not an online negotiation, just a 37-second audio codec. Its content is considered a perfect psychological tactic. The best way to love someone is to let them become someone else. That wasn't a comforting remark. It was a disconnection protocol. It rationalized the betrayal in the language of nobility. Sources close to the matter say Harry analyzed the message all night, not in search of hope, but to accept that the entity he once loved had not. It still exists. In that context, Princess Anne established a safe buffer zone. She was the sole provider of logistical support, but it came with a drawback. Firewall strict. Locations like rural Gloucester or Western Lodge were suggested as places to meet the children, but her message was as cold as steel. We are defending family honor, not personal regrets. This isn't forgiveness. This is risk management. Anne is drawing a clear line. Royal support ends where the consequences of Harry's personal actions begin. And finally, the big picture is complete with a tragic contrast. January 19th. Meghan shines in Abu Dhabi in the aura of feigned autonomy and renewal. January 23rd. Harry stands alone in Geneva in the stark reality. No bodyguards, no fanfare. At that quiet moral forum, the boy who had once dreamed of escaping the golden cage realized a cruel paradox. He had never truly been free. He had merely moved from one jailer to another, more sophisticated one. On the podium, Harry detonated the final truth bomb, tearing apart all illusions. I was manipulated. I was exploited as a financial asset, not just by the world, but by the very architect of my new life, whom I once trusted completely. With those words, the curtain fell. The drama, which had lasted nearly a decade, was over. And now, amidst the ashes of illusions, a truly real person is beginning to take their first steps. In Geneva, the truth didn't just come from words, but from encrypted data packets. Prince Harry revealed that the clue to his awakening stemmed from an anonymous email sent via the secure Proton Mail protocol. Inside was the blueprint of a business deal he never signed. Leaked documents revealed the existence of an intellectual property licensing agreement signed in October 2024 with Fremont Media, a California-based company specializing in restructuring crises into culture. Analysts have dubbed the content of this agreement as follows: the transfer of memory assets, handwritten letters, personal diaries, and the most intimate psychological analyses of the royal family. All were packaged into a commercial product catalog, books, film adaptations, and courses branded as healing. What shocked Harry wasn't the financial figures, but the absence of his own name in the co-owner section. This was proof that in this alliance he wasn't a partner, he was production materials. But the seriousness of the Fremont case didn't stop there. Attached to the email were audio files, evidence of an internal monitoring system. Operated right at the Sussex estate since 2020, these tapes record everyday conversations. But from an analytical perspective, they resemble intelligence gathering, intel gathering. One excerpt mentions Princess Kate. Her silence was the strongest slap in the face. This is the weaponization of nonverbal behavior. Another passage describes King Charles. He doesn't understand. The company doesn't protect you, it modifies you. A deconstructive portrayal of the leader. Even more terrifying was the sound of Harry's own voice. A tired, passive voice. "Maybe we should stop talking like this when the kids are home." That wasn't the voice of an accomplice, but the voice of experimental subjects exhausted in his own home. If this data is true, it completely contradicts all claims of privacy. After all, you can't demand privacy when you're turning your living room into a secret recording studio. Immediately after the Geneva earthquake, all cameras were focused on Kensington Palace awaiting a blow or a tear, but they received only absolute silence. Prince William and Princess Catherine activated a psychological tactic called Grey Rock, becoming numb, unresponsive, and bored in the face of any provocation. During his visit to Manchester Children's Hospital, William appeared the composure of an heir to the throne. Catherine was radiant, completely focused on her official duties. Not a blink of an eye in response to the questions shouted from the crowd of reporters. However, behind the iron gates, security sources confirmed a permanent change in status. A senior aide revealed the Geneva speech marked the end. To Prince William, Harry is no longer his younger brother, but an entity that has been taken, irreparably compromised. In the mind of the future head of the royal family, Harry had become a living security vulnerability. No more bridges, no more diplomatic meetings. Catherine reportedly described these revelations as a predictable scenario, but her response was a call for maximum restraint. They understood that in this information war, the first person to speak up and explain is the loser. And so while Harry was alone, exposing the truth in Switzerland and England, the final wall had officially closed. He was free from the deception, but at the cost of absolute isolation from his own past. In Hampshire, there were no more sirens, no more flashing lights. Only silence remained. Harry didn't face royal punishment. He faced something far more terrifying, the consequences of complicity. For years, he used his reputation to defend a flawed script. Now that the curtain has fallen, he realizes he wasn't a victim. He was the architect of his own prison. On the morning of January 24th, Princess Anne sent a cool but decisive message putting an end to all speculation. The royal family is not a shelter from the storm. When you choose to leave, the gates are locked from the inside. That's not cruelty. That's system preservation protocol. Harry remains a beloved grandson in memory, but a security risk in reality. Meanwhile, across the ocean, a new empire is rising. Meghan launches her platform, Ark Legacy. The name Harry is no longer used. No longer holding a royal title, she took the final step in her brand management strategy, total decoupling. She strode forward like a queen in her own right. Harry remained behind, with a letter to King Charles never sent lying cold in his trunk. The letter contained only a belated realization. Duty, it turns out, is the highest form of freedom. The story doesn't end with a peace treaty. It ends with a paradox. The one who wanted to escape the gilded cage now longs to return. The one who wanted to change the world now only wishes to rediscover himself. The silence of Buckingham Palace today is not the end. It is the beginning of a new era, where old names will gradually fade from the annals. Will Harry fade into oblivion as a shadow on the fringes of history? Or is this a step backward to prepare for another earth-shattering counterattack? The answer is still being written. This information is for reference only based on unverified hypotheses and rumors/public opinions. Let's discuss this issue from an objective analytical perspective. Now it's time for you to make your mark in this information war type 1. If you believe this scenario is actually unfolding in the shadows, type 0. If you choose to retain the skeptical attitude of a discerning observer, don't just watch, think, press, like to confirm presence, and subscribe the channel immediately. As this velvet curtain falls, another veil of secrecy is about to be lifted. The British crown has never been a static relic. It is a living entity constantly evolving. At Kensington, we are witnessing the clear signals of an epic-making shift. Prince William, alongside Princess Charlotte, is penning the opening lines of a bold new chapter 1 that is both more youthful and more decisive. Is King Charles's silence a voluntary step back, or is it a calculated part of a strategic royal rescue mission? Before we dive deep into the analysis, share your perspective. Comment 1 for the reformers or 0 for the traditionalists. Join me as we decode this monumental shift in the great balance of power. That day at Kensington Palace, an seemingly ordinary event held unmistakable implications. In keeping with British royal tradition, important announcements are usually delivered cautiously and through multiple layers of vetting. However, when Prince William stepped onto the platform, he not only displayed the role of an heir, but also the demeanor of a leader. This was more than just the appearance of a member of the royal family. It was a statement of power and preparation for the future. Alongside him, Princess Catherine and Prince George form a strong bond symbolizing not only the stability of the new royal brand, but also a strategically significant image in the ever-changing world. However, the element of surprise lies in the appearance of Princess Charlotte. When Prince William announced Charlotte's role as representative, it wasn't simply a matter of entrusting responsibility to a child. It could be a strategic move by a leader affirming preparation for future generations. The hypothesis is, could this be a strategic move to elevate the roles and status of members of the royal family? Systematic analysis might suggest an acceleration in the building of power, with each individual in the family assuming more significant responsibilities and roles than ever before. But the real question is, will this shift lead to a smooth transfer of power, or is it merely a harbinger of far-reaching changes in the future of the British monarchy? With the third generation rapidly rising to the center, it becomes clear that this is not merely a shift in the royal family's narrative, but a deeper strategy to ensure continuity and stability during a turbulent period. This arguably signals a system in urgent need of renewal and rejuvenation. The question is, why has this urgency become necessary? Public opinion is raising questions about this. Could the functioning of King Charles's reign be facing challenges unknown to the public? Many theories suggest that the monarchy's central processor may be facing problems that have not been officially disclosed. The silence of King Charles III and Queen Camilla throughout this process was not a coincidence. On the contrary, it was a crucial factor that cannot be overlooked. In the world of politics and diplomacy, silence sometimes carries far more weight than words. F. These silent actions may be a strategy to project subtle power or to avoid comments that could alarm the public. Behavioral analysts suggest that a soft transition is underway, a quiet but impactful process that is gradually changing the face of the royal family. Looking at approval ratings, it's clear that William and Catherine are rising strongly, not only domestically but globally. But what is happening inside the palace? Unverified reports suggest that King Charles's system is showing signs of overload. Postponing visits, canceling schedules, and withdrawing from energy-intensive events are not mere coincidences. Are these warning signs of impending change or simply temporary difficulties? The truth may be more complex than it appears on the surface. It could be argued that as Prince William continues to appear more prominently and forcefully in public events, this cannot simply be seen as a surpassing of his father, King Charles. In fact, these actions may be part of a subtle rescue process aimed at filling the power vacuum left by King Charles, despite being the head of state. A noteworthy hypothesis has been put forward. The dynasty is no longer operating on a linear model, but is gradually shifting to a parallel one in which King Charles holds the symbolic constitutional role on one side, and the Welsh family, particularly William and Catherine, wield real power in shaping the future and managing public diplomacy on the other. William's decision to visit the Manchester Children's Hospital instead of attending the King's meeting should not be interpreted as rebellion or a challenge to authority. It may be a strategy of resource optimization, where each member of the royal family takes on the most important fronts depending on their influence and capabilities. These decisions can help allocate resources more effectively, given the enormous workload and responsibilities the royal family faces. However, as with any systemic change, there is always friction. Princess Charlotte's placement in such a significant position so early may be a bold move, but it also carries risks. Is this a necessary step to consolidate the power of the Welsh family, or will it create fragmentation and conflict within the royal family's operations? This question remains open, and we will have to wait and see whether this strategy will strengthen the royal family in the future or create unforeseen challenges. Whispers about the events of the previous decade still echoed, making her legitimacy a major question mark. However, history always takes unexpected turns. Could someone who was once at the center of public opinion become the most reliable anchor for the dynasty in times of crisis? If you observe closely, you'll notice a subtle shift. The most powerful figure seems to appear less frequently in front of the cameras. Instead, there are brief announcements about the treatment process. When the lighthouse no longer shines as brightly as before, who is truly steering the ship of the kingdom? In the documentary Behind Closed Doors, the Queen mentioned the cycle of trauma. But observers are paying attention to the detail at the Isle of Man. She chose to confront the issue directly rather than avoid it when discussing the king's health. Could this be a psychological stepping stone to allow the public to gradually become accustomed to the Queen's dominant presence in major decisions? Or was it simply a humane outburst from a life partner after days of bearing the burden of pressure? The contrast between the king's outwardly optimistic demeanor and his restricted activities creates a logical loophole. Are we witnessing the truth or only what is allowed to be seen? Prince William and Princess Catherine's symbols of steadfastness, they serve as pillars of steel upholding public trust. Prince Harry. A message from afar, bridging geographical distances with genuine understanding. Princess Anne, the younger sister who is believed to be bearing the heaviest burden of grief over her brother's misfortunes. But just when the world believed the royal family had established a solid defense line, a new crack appeared right at the epicenter. In November 2024, an unprecedented event occurred: a mass absence. Queen Camilla unexpectedly canceled important ceremonies at Westminster Abbey. The official announcement stated a lung infection and the need for rest as advised by her doctor. However, with the king also facing a rigorous treatment regimen, this absence inevitably raised sharp questions from the public. Is this merely a medical coincidence, or a sign of a system being overwhelmed by immense pressure? The fact that the Duchess of Gloucester had to replace her at important diplomatic events sparked a wave of conspiracy theories. Was the true state of the royal court being concealed to avoid a widespread crisis of confidence? With both of the palace's highest symbols facing physical challenges simultaneously, the future of the monarchy presented an unprecedented governance dilemma. The velvet curtains of Buckingham Palace remain drawn, yet the scripts of the future continue to be written by the world's curiosity. Are we witnessing a monarchy striving for transformation, or are we seeing the most fragile moments of a 1,000-year institution? Are we truly observing the breaking point of this millennium-old establishment? If you feel yes and believe a major shift or an underlying upheaval is being prepared, please leave a number 2 in the comments. If no and you believe this is simply a brief rest as announced, leave a number 5. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe right now so you don't miss our upcoming deep dive analyses. In the world of symbols, presence is power. But what happens when two of a nation's most revered symbols simultaneously face a health crisis? Observers are speculating about a worrying scenario: a kingdom without a direct leader. Queen Camilla's absence following the king's announcement has created a terrifying power vacuum. Remember the dark shadow that fell over the Princess of Wales, Catherine, earlier this year. Although she declared victory in her silent battle in September, its aftermath remains a grim reminder of the monarchy's fragility in the face of the trials of nature. Is Buckingham experiencing a bigger health crisis than what's being reported in the press? To understand Camilla's position, one must turn back the pages of her controversial history. Her journey was not a bed of roses, but a triumph over the ghosts of the past. However, history always takes a different turn. Can someone who was once at the center of public opinion become the most reliable anchor in times of trouble? History is the most honest mirror. In the 1950s, King George VI kept his health a closely guarded secret to protect the nation's image, leading to shock when the funeral bells rang. In contrast, Princess Margaret chose to publicly acknowledge her decline, bridging the gap with the common people. Buckingham Palace is currently torn between these two strategies: security for stability or transparency for empathy. In November 2024, an unprecedented event occurred: a mass absence. When both the king and queen had to temporarily leave the stage due to health reasons, an astonishing power pause occurred. Camilla's dedication to organizations such as Macmillan, it's not just a ceremonial role, but an inner empathy. But when the torchbearer also faces the cold winds of exhaustion, who will be there to give her strength? Perhaps these rifts are the strongest glue binding the royal family and the people together. We stand before a new chapter in British royal history, where the lines between privacy and official duty are blurred more than ever. Apologies for absences, optimistic announcements of recovery, and even veiled silences, all are creating a multifaceted picture. Where does the truth lie behind the closed doors of the palace? Is it a dynasty resiliently healing itself, or the beginning of an inevitable power transition, the tip of which we have only just begun to see? Our investigation goes beyond dry medical reports, delving into an unprecedented psychological shift. Queen Camilla, once a figure at the center of controversy, is becoming a symbol of empathy. Why did she choose to confront serious illnesses like cancer and osteoporosis with such determination? This is explored in the organization's coffee chat sessions. Macmillan, or those quiet visits to the laboratories, were not just a ritual. It was her way of humanizing the crown. As she confronted her own lung infection, the public no longer saw a distant monarch, but a human being battling the limits of her physical being. Could it be that these rifts in health are the strongest glue binding the royal family and ordinary people together? One notable hypothesis is being discussed by international observers. Is healthcare transparency a new diplomatic tactic? Beyond the borders of England, major powers are looking to Buckingham as a model of adaptation. The public disclosure of the hidden aspects of royal health is not merely an act of honesty, but a far-reaching policy reform. Under the king's approval, a new wave of health awareness is spreading, promising a comprehensive transformation of the national healthcare system. But consider the perseverance of the leading couple. King Charles III, a guardian of the environment and sustainability, has dedicated his life to preparing for a greener era. And now, as he and the Queen face personal challenges, they are writing a chapter of unwavering determination together. Their legacy is not just about laws, but about the ability to modernize an ancient institution in its most fragile moments. We have explored the hidden corners of the palace, from the secrets of the past to the transparency of the present. Queen Camilla and King Charles III stand before a stage larger than ever before, where every step, every breath, and every announcement is scrutinized under the microscope of history. Light is gradually returning behind the stone walls of Buckingham, but the questions remain. Is this transparency a voluntary choice or a necessity of the times? After the storms of health issues, in what direction will a more human monarchy lead the world? The truth may have layers we have yet to uncover, and time will be the fairest judge. Ultimately, the crown may be cast in gold, but it shines only through the support of millions of hearts. We are witnessing the greatest transfer of power in modern history, not by sword, but by an understanding of the times. Keep your eyes on Kensington, for the newest chapters of history have only just begun to be written. Who holds the real power? The new generation with its reformist mindset, or the older generation with its extensive experience? Share your verdict in the comments below. If you find this analysis insightful, please click like, share, and subscribe to the channel. That's the best way to support us in continuing to unravel the mysteries behind the velvet curtain. Thank you, and see you in the next episode. Sapisatari. Within the silent corridors of power, silence itself can sometimes carry a weight more terrifying than any official statement. A hypothesis is currently drawing intense attention among elite observers that the succession mechanism at Kensington does not operate merely on a simple when the time comes basis, but is instead governed by an emergency brake system. As a royal figure approaches the milestone age of 40, triggering the activation of a massive trust fund from the past, we might assume this to be an automatic process. But no. For a long time, the public has been swept up in media sparring, yet according to our analysis, the true tip of the iceberg lies in the flow of finances. The hypothesis raised here is this: does an older brother acting as the future guardian of the system have the right to intervene in the flow of a younger brother's assets on the basis of moral standards? There are indications that a strategy referred to as a localized asset freeze is being considered. Rather than impulsive outbursts of anger, this appears to be a cold, calculated move grounded in a doctrine of preserving honor. The core argument placed on the scales is this: when a member breaks away from the system's shared orbit, do they retain the same privilege of drawing upon that system's resources? To truly understand this legal machine, we must look away from the headlines and step into the imagined space of the muniment room, the repository of memory and highly classified documents. According to analytical data on aristocratic customs, the key to this matter does not lie in existing law, but in a more abstract concept, the letter of wishes. A handwritten document from 1993 is now regarded as the most critical variable. For 3 decades, it was merely a sheet of paper resting silently in the archives. Today, however, amid shifts in family structure, this document has suddenly become a legal shield. Our hypothesis is this: the document does not merely govern money, it establishes a moral filter. Can a handwritten piece of paper from 30 years ago truly have the power to halt the flow of millions of dollars? That is the million-dollar question we need to answer. If you appreciate our approach of hypothesis and analysis rather than baseless rumors, leave a comment saying agreed and share this video with friends who share a passion for uncovering the truth. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel because the most unexpected variables have yet to be revealed. Its contents, though never officially made public, are believed to enshrine an unbreakable principle of the late mother: wealth must serve the well-being of her children, yet at the same time function as a resource to protect and uphold the dignity of the family. So what happens when these two objectives, individual interest and family honor, move in opposite directions? In your view, within a system that places such high value on tradition, can a handwritten spiritual testament truly possess enough power to override rigid financial rules? Or is this merely the opening move in a broader redefinition of inheritance itself? For many years, the working assumption of the one who departed rested on what was considered an absolutely safe variable, that the flow of finances from the maternal bloodline was untouchable, entirely separate from the royal family. He believed that biological status, being Diana's son, would always outrank political status. However, a sharp counter-argument is now being actively debated. On the side of the heir to the throne, William, there appears to be a deliberate effort to redefine the concept of entitlement. The reasoning here is not emotional, but rooted in asset management logic, the purpose of the capital itself. If the 1993 letter is treated as the constitution of the trust, then it contains a brutal paradox the system is now forced to confront. The original intent of the bequest was to provide resources for independence and security. Yet in today's reality, that very flow of capital is suspected of being used to finance a media machine that turns back and attacks